Hey everybody, Ben here from DMC Films and Cinderblock Studios, and guess what I did today? So, much like my last big art store trip, the video for which I released back in January, I decided, you know what, I want to do one of these videos again. You guys seem to really like it, and I've got some new and exciting things to talk about in this bag today. New materials for me, really kind of cool stuff that's a little bit different, and also like the other video, this one's going to be more of a vlog, so I'm not going to cut this up too much. I'm just going to dive right into it. So to start things off, actually I'm going to start off with the story. So what I mentioned the last time is that my art store, Utrecht, was closing and moving and becoming a Blick. Now Utrecht and Blick are basically one company these days. One thing I was a little bummed with, though, is the new store. While I can't tell if it's bigger or smaller, the selection of what they have has changed. There's definitely more Blick products than there have been Utrecht products, and there's also a handful of things that I'm surprised they just don't have anymore. One in particular was my Liquitex acrylic inks. They're not there. What they have are the Daryl and Ronnery acrylic inks, which work, but they're not as good. So I was like, how did you completely get rid of these? Like, what? But to be fair, the salespeople didn't seem to even know that they were in the old store, which I guess means that I was the only one buying them. Now the good side of this is that not only can I order them online from the retailer, but you can actually order stuff directly from Liquitex's website and have them shipped to you, so it's not like I'm completely losing access to it. Okay, so let's get into the bag now. Restock on sketchbooks. I just started up sketchbook 20 a couple of weeks ago, so this will be 21 and 22 whenever I get around to them. I'm sticking with the 5x7 sketchbooks for my day-to-day stuff, and I'm starting to move back to doing sort of a secondary other sketchbook. The other sketchbook in this case is going to go into my Nomad. Kind of tweeted about this recently. Travel art bag from artist Darren Yao. Really cool. It's going to allow me to go out and do more field studies, which I did about a week ago, and I'm loving it so far. Really great to travel with this stuff, and it feels good to get out and do some, studying from life again. So that's really good. Alright, so my watercolor paper is starting to run low. I used it a lot for my acrylic demos a lot. But I was also thinking about how I use watercolor paper. So I decided to get, I saw this was a little bit interesting. It's a long, skinny book of watercolor paper from Strathmore. There's 12 sheets in here, and this is 6 by 18 inches. That's really interesting. It's a long, skinny thing, or tall, depending on how you decide to play with it. I think depending on whether I'm doing sort of smaller projects or larger ones, I think this is going to be a good size for me, despite being a little unusual. We've also got a toned tan sketchbook. There's only, 60 sheets in here? 50 sheets. Also a Strathmore sketchbook. I'm not used to this kind of paper, but I definitely want to try and use it, particularly with my field sketches. So I really wanted to get that for this, because when I'm doing my field sketches, I'm using either like graphite or charcoal or something that isn't ink. So usually doing something besides just a bunch of ink pens with me when I'm on the go, or at least when I'm on the go and not doing regular compositional sketches. When I'm doing field studies, I'm going to play with the tan paper as well as a handful of probably some other things down the road. Okay, now I'm grabbing the two that are just kind of restocks. I've got some Cad Yellow Medium Pure. This is my regular Cad Yellow Medium. I've had it in a jar for a long time. I decided to stick with the jar. I kind of been debating whether or not to go back to tubes. I have gone back to tubes for a lot of colors. My yellow ochre, when that goes away, there's about half left in here, and I've had this same jar for like 3 years. So this is probably going to last me another 3 or 4 years. But yellow ochre eventually is going to go back to tubes, and but the The cad yellow, I use a lot of this stuff, so I decided to keep it in the jar form. Also have some zinc white. This was a really important one for this trip because I was almost out of this. And I don't use it a lot, but it is one of those colors that shows up from time to time, both in painting videos, tutorials, and everything else like that. It's something I kind of need to have on hand, though I don't use it all the time. Okay. Next up, table brush. I've wanted these for a really long time, or at least one of them for a really long time. I'm going to go ahead and open this now, actually. This is something that I've needed for a long time, but also needed for various reasons for a long time. This is normally sold with the architectural supplies, because that's normally who use it, anyone who works on a big drafting table. Granted, I don't work on a drafting table, but I do work on a table. And whether I'm doing my acrylics, which are not messy, but when I'm switching between projects, if I'm going from a pastel, something in pastels to maybe something like anything I'm doing a lot of erasing with, I'm getting all these little fibers, even scraping off a palette. I have dried paint actually on my table right now. This is going to be super useful for just kind of brushing that stuff off. So for example, if I hold up the pad, I can just broom it off to the side. Now I probably could have bought something like this at a different store, but I kind of wanted this one. Okay, we're down to just a couple of things now. This one, some watercolor, alizarin crimson. My red watercolor, I had, I think, a couple of different reds, and they're starting to run out. I'm definitely liking the tubes. I'm definitely liking the Utrecht watercolor tubes. The color vibrancy on these are really, really good. And I was thinking about what kind of red I would want to use in watercolor, and I found that I think the alizarin crimson is going to be a good mixing color for my watercolor between the yellow, the green that I've got, and a couple other colors that are still in the jars. Alizarin crimson, I don't use this color in like any of my other paints, but I thought this one for watercolor would be really good. Next up, this one comes from a recent, I don't know, I know I talked about it in a video, sort of vlog type video recently, I just don't know which one it was. And it was at a certain point I got to try Gouache, which is an opaque watercolor, and I love it. I kind of fell in love with it. I got to try some from a friend of mine. I'm like, I might have to buy some of this. So I did. I got some color theory set of the Holbein Gouache. It actually took me a while to find this because this particular kind of package, it didn't look like it should belong in this package. I'm like, this doesn't look... Oh, it does say Holbein. Okay. So this is what they're calling the 5-color mixing set, which is your 3 primaries, black and white. So these are a new medium for me. Despite just trying it once, this is something that is very new. It's something I've definitely wanted to get into, so I'm actually really happy to have these. This piece that I'm actually still working on, all the base browns to this, was all done in gouache. And I really kind of fell in love with it doing this project, which still isn't done. But I was like, you know what? Yeah, let's keep this going and get some gouache and see what I can do with that. Next up, we've got some golden high flow acrylic. Now this is going to be really similar to an acrylic ink. It's designed for really a variety of things, anything from graphical style to airbrushing. Reason I went with this stuff compared to something like a Liquitex ink is because I want to try and put this in my Pentel Pocket brush pen. Actually, it'll be Friday's video is the review for that. So this is actually preceding that. It's a little weird, and just in terms of timing and how this worked out. But I want to try and refill that pen with this stuff. I don't know if it'll work, but if it does, it'll make it more cost effective, and you'll hear more about that in Friday's video. Plus, there's a bunch of other uses I'm probably going to end up doing with that, particularly when I do more stuff with gouache and watercolor. Finally, we got the stuff in the little bags. These are always fun. I'm actually going to rip this in half, just because it's not that needed. This one, this is more recommended both recommended and inspired from Tyler's Art Check. It's a woodless pencil. This is, granted it has a little bit of a plastic coating on it, which is nice, but you don't need to keep it on. But this entire pencil is solid graphite, which is cool. I got the 6B one from Faber-Castell. I'm gonna have fun playing with this, particularly because you really are gonna be able to hold it in layout method and kind of get some really nice wide dark strokes. This is gonna be an interesting one to play with. And finally, there's the continued effort to build my set of chalk pastels. Once again, I was like, okay, what colors do I want to get this time? Now, because they didn't have the acrylic ink that I wanted, I decided, okay, that'll just frame me up. Instead of getting 3 pastels, I'll get 4. Because that will kind of end up being what it ends up being. So to start, we've got some Burnt Sienna 4. This is a Blick pastel. I wanted something that seemed sort of like a burnt orange, and I feel like this is as close to a burnt orange as what I was thinking. So this is pretty good. I was actually surprised a lot of particularly the Blick pastels, the color jumps from Burnt Sienna 1, 2, 3 into 4 were huge. I mean, this one, between 3 and 4, that color jump was massive, and I'm like, that's a totally different color. I don't feel like you could still call that Burnt Sienna. But I do really like this one. I think it's going to be a good addition to the set. In addition, I just wanted a nice sort of plain yellow. This is yellow number 4. So it's sort of a nice, similar to like a cad yellow, but maybe leans a little bit brighter. So it's probably closer in paint to like a Hansa yellow. Like this one quite a bit. Going to be a good addition to that set. That was a Blick as well. So is this one, Raw Umber number 2. This one is sort of a warm gray in many ways. I mean, it says Raw Umber, so it's going to be a little bit like a reddish brown, but it just looks like warm gray, and that was when I looked at it, I was like, yeah, I need more of those sort of deep earthy tones. But this is still a little bit lighter. The 4th one is a Rembrandt pastel, just because I couldn't find a comparable one in the Blick pastel set. This is, they're calling it ultramarine light, but I don't think that's the case really, and you can judge for yourself on this one. But this feels like a denim blue. This has, if I had to call this a paint color, I would call this like deep Prussian, not ultramarine, but you know, and I definitely wouldn't call it light because it's not light. It's like a grayish, bluish, blackish kind of color. It's hard to think about what this color actually is. Now they call it ultramarine probably because that's the pigment they use in it, but normally I hate ultramarines, but this is a really nice blue. So that's going to be, again, interesting thing to the set. So that's what I got this time around. Definitely some new stuff, so look forward to that in some videos coming up. And we'll see what I can do with all this stuff. So I hope this stuff that I showed you has inspired you, maybe giving you some ideas on what to get on your next trip. Subscribe for more like this, and this has been from DMC Films and Cinderblock Studios. See you guys next time.